I was asked to try and record, so I'm doing my best. It's theoretically on our YouTube channel. We'll see what happens. We do have a YouTube channel for Pantano students where we're posting more long form stuff. When we get back to where we can video record our services, we will be uploading both high school and middle school messages, not worship or anything else, but we will have all our messages archived on YouTube every week once we get the new student union. Part of the tech package with that is cameras in both locations. We were recording for a while in our current student center, and the setup is less than ideal is a real nice way to put it. It's just not good, and we had multiple really big fails, including one that almost cost the church a lot of money for copyright infringement because the music we play in the background during games is something we're not supposed to put out. You know, we don't have the right to broadcast and archive other people's music without paying a lot of money for it. And it's very expensive licensing, and we don't have that license. So we can do things live. It's the same reason why, if you ever notice with the main church, we live stream our entire service with this whole different experience, but then if you go look it up on like Vimeo to catch the archive of the message, it's just the message and it stops when the music kicks in because we don't have a on-demand video license. We just have a live stream license for the music, and the price difference in those is like a couple factors of zeros. It's nuts, and the variety of songs we play, we couldn't possibly keep up with that. So the packet that I have for you is and they're there next to the computer. It's a set of contracts. Each page is front and back a different topic, or it should be, if everything printed properly. It looked like it did. And there's one that's for Home Alone, which is not really the topic here tonight, but maybe that'll be a good one for you to use. I've used the cell phone contract multiple times. I've used it with my kids, who are, again, only 8 years old, and that's worked really well for us to be able to call back to that. I don't know about you, but it's easy to threaten or say that these are the consequences. It's a lot harder to enforce them in the moment sometimes, or to be consistent. And setting yourself a kind of third-party, unbiased, piece of paper that everybody agreed to suddenly gives you a real easy, like, oh yeah, but I'm so sorry you broke that one. And it says here, if you do that, then your phone goes bye-bye for the rest of the week, or whatever the thing is that you've worked out and agreed to. And so then it's a real easy, sorry, that's what you and I agreed to when you got this phone. So when we talk about giving it back, we can talk about altering that when we're not in a position of, you're living out the consequence that we've already all agreed upon. That makes sense? So those are, there's one for cell phone, there's one for video game systems, and there's one for technology as a whole, which, any or all of those might be appropriate or none. And you might just look at that and go, oh, this almost but doesn't quite meet my needs, so I'll adjust. Do you mind filling in or signing in there on the computer? About halfway through, I'll stop and do a giveaway digitally this time. So I'm gonna make it easy instead of like pulling out my phone and typing in numbers into random.com. That was lame. So got a much better option this time. But so I think most of y'all were here. A lot of you guys were here last week, and most of you probably know me, but just in case, I'm Brian. I'm the student pastor. I've been doing ministry quite a while. And man, in the time I've been doing ministry, technology has changed in crazy ways. And in the time that from when, a lot of us were, children around the same time or in the same era, because it wasn't until the late 90s that things really started going mobile. And I lived in a mountain town, so like a cell phone didn't even work in 90% of where you could get to in my town. You had to get to the top of a mountain or a really big meadow for the cell signal to get to you because of all the really tall pine trees everywhere. And I remember like when I first got a cell phone, I walked a mile up my street and found 2 locations where I got a consistent enough signal to call my mom and tell her the phone worked. And I was a senior in high school. Like, it was ridiculous that those weren't a thing. I had a pager in sophomore and junior year, and it was my girlfriend's pager that she gave me so that she could get a hold of me when she wanted to hang out or whatever, because I had no other, like, nobody had mobile phones, and like, that was in like 96, like, nobody had a cell phone except Zach Morris, you know, and his was like, I mean, it looked like something out of, you know, World War II or Vietnam, kind of, you know, like radio calling on the backpack. I mean, it was, so, you know, and now, yeah, and now, I mean, like, my phone is a supercomputer. My phone takes better photos than my digital camera that I have at home. I have a DSLR that like has exchangeable lenses and whatnot, and it's not that old, and my phone takes better photos than that does, higher quality, crisper things. Our phones, my phone has, I think I got the 500 gig storage option. It's got half a terabyte of storage built into the dumb phone, and it fits in my pocket. And I mean, the amount of computing power, the things you can do, I'm live streaming to the internet right now. I'm recording, and it's not just shooting video, it's getting the audio, but it's also putting it online and broadcasting it all over to nobody. No one's watching this. I can see the count right now. No one's watching. Nobody cares. It doesn't matter. The point is to have it there for the people who couldn't be here right now because they had somewhere else to be, so they'll watch it later. But it's streaming. If somebody in Africa decided they wanted to watch this, they could get online right now on YouTube and find our channel and watch what I'm saying right now with like no more than a 30-second to a minute delay. And it's saving it at the same time so that at any point in the future, anybody who wants to or just accidentally stumbles across it can get to that video and see what we've talked about right here. And that's a really weird and different thing. That's I mentioned this show last week a little bit, but there's a show that my wife and I watch a lot. It's called Blue Bloods, and just in the course of the show, it's been on TV for, I think it's airing season 9, like currently on TV right now. So it's been on the air for 9 years, and in that time, technology has changed so much that they've had to rewrite how certain things go because, you know, like now, like they have, you know, accurate scenes where like, you know, if they're shooting a scene where like cops are out doing something in the street, everybody's got their phones out and are watching them and like keeping them, you know, supposedly keeping them on the up and up with what they're doing. And so like people have this ability, but it also means that we have the ability to do really terrible, horrible things with all of this technology. I just saw another case of somebody getting busted locally in Pima County for child pornography, and when they like grabbed the guy's computer, he had like multiple hard drives with terabytes of video and photo of stuff. I mean, like that's thousands, tens of thousands of images and videos. I mean, that's horrible. There are things, there was an app, oh gosh, I'm forgetting the name of it all of a sudden. It had like a bull logo. It doesn't matter. It mostly got, it mostly went under because it got in so much trouble for, what it did was it was, it was location-based messaging, group messaging. And so what it was you could only see usernames, and you could keep it as anonymous as you wanted. There was no way to access any other profile information through the app. And any of us that were on campus here, we could bring it up and it would show anybody else in the app who's on there, and we could all talk to each other in a group chat only as long as we were in the same location. So what people started doing was kids started downloading it and cyberbullying each other live in class with no teachers or any adults able to even figure out who it was. And all of a sudden it created these crazy, you know, really intense, very quick moving bullying circles online. And it was this horrible way that was used. Snapchat, when it first came out, was meant to be a way that you could discreetly send inappropriate content that you wouldn't want anybody to be able to hang on to. And if you tried to hang on to it, and still, if you try to hang on to it, it notifies you. If you send me a snap of something on Snapchat and I take a screenshot, it sends you a notification there's been a screenshot taken of that, because once I look at it, I think if you send it to me directly, I can double tap and see it one more time. But if I don't do that, or if I leave it alone for very long, it goes away. And I can't even see my stuff that I send to you after a little while. all the stuff you post in your story and everything else. And so Snapchat is full of terrible content, and they just went through a big scandal just last year, within the last 12 months, where they released, they've realized the power of marketing with, these kind of real-time, what it does with everything going away. Instead of having downloadable content like this will be, where you could go back and be like, hey, I want to hear about that kind of stuff, so I want to grab it. They realized that there's a very immediate conversational, but like universally huge conversation that people can have with their customers. And so companies started realizing the marketing potential of this is astronomical, and you can have these much more kind of intimate but much more personalized dialogues with customers, even for a major corporation, by having this immediate content that anytime you go and look at the story from Nike or BuzzFeed or whoever it is, you're going to see different content every time you open it. You can't just get back to the same thing you saw before. And then sometimes they link to an article that's existing or whatever. But so what they started doing was they rolled out a thing called After Dark, and it was hardcore porn available right in Snapchat. And it got so much backlash, even from people who normally probably wouldn't be defenders of purity and righteousness in media content, just said, this is really inappropriate. Like, this went from a platform that I had no problem like looking at work, to where now I accidentally stumble upon that channel as I'm swiping through a bunch of stuff, and all of a sudden I'm loading, really horrendous things that I didn't want to look at, and I'm sitting in my office, on my lunch break, and I could get fired for things like that. And people were catching on that some of that stuff really was causing more damage. But then the other, another side of all the technology that's out there, even the stuff that mostly we're all on, Facebook, things like Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, are now, it's routine that people will Facebook stalk you or internet stalk you and look at all your social media profiles. There's multiple stories of people losing jobs, scholarships. There was another story that came out that one of our students, one of my high school students, posted on Facebook. He shared a Twitter story that had been, kind of memed out, so to speak, where you guys all familiar with what it, does anyone not know what a meme is? And then I can explain that. Okay, cool. No shame in that. No joke, my 24-year-old assistant often doesn't know what any of the lingo or slang or memes are, so we have a good laugh teasing her about all that stuff, because I won't go into it because I don't want to call out everybody else who wouldn't get it, but for a 24-year-old, it's kind of like, you're the people who are making these up. How do you not know this? But she's like a 50-year-old in a 24-year-old body and mind, so she's hilarious. But this Twitter conversation had gone viral, and it shows how different our culture has become, especially for your kids. This is the world they live in, and as I talk through this, listen to the mentality shift that has to occur for this to be the right perspective. So what had happened was, there's a girl who on her Twitter feed, she's graduated high school and she's been accepted, or graduated college even, I believe, and or is in college and has been accepted into a NASA internship. And what she posts is like, I'm working for NASA, mother effers, like all this crazy stuff. And a bunch of people are like, yeah, you get it, girl, you go, girl, like all this. And then one person comments, language. That's the only comment, language. Because she dropped an F-bomb with a tag of NASA on there, which means that whoever's over the social media for NASA, who is not only looking at the handle on Twitter, the username on Twitter, they're going to get a notification because she tagged that. She also used several hashtags with NASA in them, which they're going to be monitoring. You can do that for free on any Twitter client, including Twitter, but also all the other ones that will help you look at Twitter. And so all these, this is easily accessible publicly by just about anybody. And this girl who's just been awarded an internship at NASA has somebody randomly comment language, because her language was inappropriate, right? I mean, really, like, you wouldn't walk into the office and be like, what up, mother effer, you know, like, whoa, chill. That's not business appropriate language, and that's not the kind of thing that anybody would want portrayed as, like, this is our new intern, we're so proud. You know, like, just like, you know, if that was your kid and you saw that, you're like, oh, wow, I'm so proud right now, thank you, you're really honoring our family. Why is your name on that? So, language, that didn't sit well with her. So she retaliates and goes, who are you to tell me what the F I can and can't say, and just lays into this guy. And he's like, I'm just saying that's not appropriate. So she lays into him some more. Who are you to judge me or to tell me what I can and can't do? It's a free country, you bigoted white, blah, blah, blah. She happened to be a person of color. He happens to be a white guy who also happens to be a U.S. senator who sits on NASA's appropriations committee, who actually did absolutely nothing to affect anything, but because of the back and forth, and she kept tagging NASA in all of her responses, NASA came back with the person who's over her internship program and announced on Twitter, on her public display of just idiocy, you're fired. We're gonna go ahead and rescind this internship. Which then got a ton of backlash. And the senator who ended up instigating that by accident and completely in the right in what he said and kept his cool through the whole thing, went back and fought for her to have a chance at that, and still everybody said, yeah, you better do that because you don't have any business sticking your nose where it don't belong, and blah, 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 and all this stuff. The mentality of kids these days, especially online, is I do what I want, and if you tell me I'm wrong, you're wrong. And that hypocrisy does not matter to them. What you do in telling them that was inappropriate is way out of bounds, and how dare you? But I can say whatever I want, and for you to question it is not only for you to be backwards and ignorant and out of touch and just stupid and old now, but you're also a bigot, and you're also, oh, you're a Christian, so you're a right-wing lunatic who probably is a gun-toting, abortion shooting, you know, like crazy. I mean, just like all the, and it's just this huge personal slam where they just write you off as an entire human even. There was a journalist who made a comment about a hip-hop artist who, she's a music journalist. Literally her job is critiquing and writing about the music industry and the current acts that are out there. I mean, right? I mean, like music journalism, Rolling Stone, you go to read, and you don't expect fluff piece for everything. You expect that they're going to talk about, hey, this album wasn't as good, you know, in the reviews section, or like the band really seems like they've kind of lost a step, or whatever it is. You know, they're going to talk about those things. And somebody said about a rather ridiculous artist who's over the top all the time, you know, it seems like at some point she's going to hit 40, and maybe these kind of like booty shake club songs won't, you know, like I think she's got more in her. And I'd love to see that progression begin before she's so old nobody's listening anymore. That was it. It wasn't even like a real negative review. It was just like, I think there's potential for a deeper artist that's going to have a longer career than what this latest album shows. Because there's amidst all the just like flash and pop stuff, there's some good stuff there. Well, she direct messaged the journalist and blasted her. I mean, just said horrible things like, I'll find you, I will kill you, I will feed your kids to the dogs, like I will, like, I mean, just like horrible threats and everything else. And so the journalist, like, and didn't respond to anything. So it was like, hey man, I just wrote a review, chill. And then she came back with all this other stuff like that. So she put it online and said, some people are crazy. And all of this artist's followers put the journalist on blast. They all went after her. Turns out the manager for that artist happens to work for the same parent company that owns this journalist's magazine blog she was writing for. So she's been blacklisted in the industry. She was fired, and nobody would touch her with a 30-foot pole in journalism right now. That happened maybe 6 months ago. Wow. That's the world that we live in, where people pile on real quick. There's this insane mob mentality with stuff, and where students feel that young people feel this entitlement to literally do whatever they want, post whatever they want, say whatever they want, and if you question it, you're wrong. I've seen multiple times students, who I know are great kids. There were a couple just recently that I felt bad because I finally just felt like I had to unfollow them. One girl that used to be on a worship team that I oversaw was posting so much. She's a very pretty girl, and she's an adult now, and she's pursuing a music and dance career. And so, it used to be there were times where I would scroll and my kids would notice sometimes I'm scrolling Instagram and there'd be this random video of somebody in, basically a sports bra and spandex dancing on my screen. And they're like, Daddy, what are you looking at? And I'm like, I'm not and I'm rolling past it. I'm not even stopping to watch because I'm I knew this girl in middle school. I don't want to watch that. But it's also she's getting a couple thousand likes on every post like that. So then she went and did a modeling shoot in swimwear and all these things and doing all these poses and everything. And I was and it was one post. I'm okay, I can ignore one post. But then it was 2, and then it was 3, and then it was 4, and then it was from a different photographer, and then it was this. And now it's the whole feed, and there's all these things popping up. And then the way Instagram works is if you like things, they keep showing up at the top of your feed again. If there's activity, it keeps coming to the top. It's not purely chronological. You may have noticed this on Facebook as you're going through, you see something, and this happens to me all the time. I see something when I load Facebook, even on my phone or on my computer. I load Facebook, I see something, I gotta touch it, and it reloads and shuffles it down to some place that I never locate again. I've tried before because there were things stuff like that argument about the Twitter beef with the NASA people, where I wanted to locate something like that because a student had posted something that really, I was did I see what I think I just saw? I really question what's going on with that kid if they're posting something like that. And so I was trying to find it so I could address it with them offline. And I know better than to, dig into every comment. They sometimes I'll post something, but I'll keep it real light. And as soon as anybody starts going crazy, I did comment on that NASA one, and one of their friends started going crazy on me, and I was and I lost my wits for a second, and I didn't post it, but I said, "You're what's wrong with this." And then I looked at that for a second, and I thought, no, that didn't help anybody, and so I deleted it again. But it felt good to get it out for a second because it was goodness, man, you're what's wrong with the world right now. People who think the arguments you're making don't even make sense. But what you're saying is what's wrong with this picture. But this is the world our kids live in, and Facebook, moves these things. Instagram moves these things, and it's the newest, but also the most popular. Or I'm getting all these new things on Facebook where it's one time you liked a video that was similar to this. And so I found this random, I was scrolling through and it looked like a shark was about to eat a surfer. I was what the heck is that? And I stopped for a second as I'm scrolling through stuff. And it was somebody swimming in New Zealand, and killer whales were swimming around. And those things are huge and scary looking. I'd be terrified. She just keeps she rolls over, does the backstroke, and she's chilling, and they're swimming up next to her feet and swimming up right next to her and looking at her, and fins going over her as they're swimming by and then coming back. And I'm just that's a 30-foot animal, and those things eat seals. They bite seals in half. No, not me. I would not stay in the water with that thing. They heard what happened to Shamu. They're upset. But so I looked at that, and then I scrolled down. I'm who the heck posted this thing anyway? Where did this come from? What friend of mine is sharing this video? That happens a lot. You get somebody random, and I scroll down, and not even anybody I know. It's just you once liked it. This is similar to something you've liked. And great. Now Facebook is just randomly assigning me utter nonsense to waste my time on. So that I have no need to watch some lady swim with orcas in New Zealand. I don't care. But it was distracting for a moment, and that's what they want. They want me to just sit there and dive into the blue hole of Facebook and get lost in that and come back up for air hours later. So with all of that stuff, part of the problem with the way this stuff has developed is that as this technology gets out there, what something starts off as is not always what it ends up being. So Facebook, you know, if you've seen anybody watch that Facebook, I don't know, I don't remember what it was called, social media or whatever, like, but the story about Mark Zuckerberg and how he started Facebook, and it was basically like a way for him and his buddies to rate all the girls in their college, like, you know, the hot or not list, and then it turned into something bigger because some people saw more potential for, like, hey, you could actually like stay connected with people with this kind of system, and then you know, like, this could be way better than MySpace and all that kind of thing. But all those things, they have lasting repercussions, what we do and how we interact with those things. And your students don't always see that. And not only do they not catch like the repercussions of, like, I posted that and it doesn't really go away, even on Snapchat. There's been multiple times where things have happened where Snapchat's servers have been hacked, and then all this stuff published. There were a bunch of celebrity scandals, celebrities who had snapped nude or you know, suggestive videos and photos of themselves and sent them to significant others or whatever. And somebody hacked Snapchat servers and got into a bunch of that stuff and put it all over the internet. And a bunch of people got, you know, very upset. Same thing happened to like Apple and iCloud, people who were instant messaging their photos, and then the iCloud servers got hacked. And then all that stuff that was private and just sent from one person to another is now on display for the world to see. And that kind of stuff, like, that's possible. And so, like, you have no real guarantee of secrecy and privacy, but it's very much implied. Anonymity, I can say that word, anonymity, and secrecy are implied in a lot of what the students use. But also, the attitudes that come out, even like that Twitter beef thing, the NASA one, what they ended up letting her go for was not just the swearing, but it was also just the pride and the ignorance of somebody who's treating it that way, and just the entitlement. And they were like, we have no place for somebody who's already that full of themselves. Obviously, you don't need our help. You know, you're doing just fine. Clearly, you're ready to rule the world, so good luck. And people don't realize the damage that stuff can have. Before I move on to the next piece of things, any comments, thoughts, or questions that anybody would like to share? Any clarifications? Did I talk about anything that you're like, I have no idea what that meant? Which is okay, this is a safe space. Your kids won't watch this video, I promise. I could tell them to, they still won't. So they'll be like, no, it's cool, you're talking to my parents about MySpace, and I've never even been on that, so. Justin Timberlake bought MySpace about 5 years ago. He tried to resurrect it and turn it into a music service. They made it look really cool for a minute. It had full screen autoplay video that you could click to activate the sound on behind your entire MySpace deal. Like, it looked like a totally different website, but it was still MySpace. And it was the worst, and because it was still MySpace and nobody would go on it. And then it started becoming this music platform, and then it failed real hard because other younger people with more influence, or just as much as somebody like Justin Timberlake, ended up just making fun of it a lot, and it died off. So anyway, any questions, comments, things? Okay, so a little bit. Okay. I want to talk through some of the stuff that's out there that your students might be into. Most students, most teenagers, most young people, even in the 20-somethings, are going to at some point get a Facebook account these days. Most of them will, because you need it for access to other things. They will not be on Facebook. That's not a reliable way to keep tabs on them. If you're following Facebook, trying to keep an eye on your kid, I promise whatever you're seeing is a small fraction of what they're actually up to or posting. That's not where they hang out. The title of this today, I put the subtitle, like, social media is the new mall, because social media, the internet, is where kids hang out. That's where kids go to talk. Even like I was saying, the name of one of the chapters in this book I'm going to give away in a little bit was, like, how do we get out of the thing where we're all sitting in the same room texting each other, and like, no joke, I know people, like, I know students who will sit there and, like, when we're just hanging out before groups on Wednesday nights, we'll all be sitting on the couches talking and whatnot, but then all of a sudden, like, everybody's just sitting here, and then I'll glance over and I'll see that there's a group text that they're having a conversation, and it's like the 4 people sitting on the same couch. who are talking amongst themselves, but suddenly they had some, and I mean, most of the time I'll be like, I check, and sometimes I'm like, shoot, are they talking about how lame I am? I'm that lame old guy all of a sudden. I know that's coming, and it's happened before in some cases, but for by the grace of God, for some reason I don't often get labeled that. But I looked over and it was completely innocent, completely nothing bad. They weren't saying anything terrible. They were just continuing a conversation that they have going, but they just weren't sharing it with the rest of the room. And it's just a very weird thing where this is where they hang out. And everything has a component to it. My kids just got a Nintendo Switch, or they've had it for a year now, but they have a Nintendo Switch. I didn't want to get them an Xbox or anything because it's way too expensive, but it also, the games are a lot more advanced, and my girls are only 8. They don't need all that craziness. I don't need them to be able to, snipe somebody from 300 yards on Call of Duty. Like, they're not ready for that. I don't know if I'm ready for that. It's been a while since I played something like that. But so they're playing Mario Kart, and we hooked it up. It was like $15 for the year, and we hooked it up to the internet. And I called up I texted my brother-in-law, and I said, "Hey man, what are you guys doing?" And he's like, "We're just sitting around hanging out." I'm like, "The kids want to play Mario Kart?" "Yeah." And so all of a sudden I see online, it shows this little planet, and all of a sudden this other like little Wii character, or this me, the little like character you can make to look like yourself, big tall one with a bigger beard than mine, walks over and stands next to mine. And so there's my brother-in-law, he's online, so now we get on and play, and now my kids are racing their cousins in northern Nevada, which is a 12 to 15 hour drive, or a like 3 or 4 hour flight to get all the way over there, because there's no direct flights out of Tucson to anywhere except Phoenix. And no, I've flown to Dallas to get to Nevada, so I don't know if the plane knows how that works, but so they're and not only that, but then he goes, "Hey, do you have the app on your phone?" And I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Open it up." And so I open up the Nintendo Switch control app on my phone, and I set it in front of us, and we are now live chatting while playing on the thing. And where like something like an Xbox has the capacity for the headset and live conversation directly through the Xbox, the Switch isn't as powerful. It's a little handheld. It's basically a Kindle-sized tablet that controllers attached to, if you haven't seen these yet. And so it's like a PSP or like a Game Boy that also has a dock that you can set on your and hook up to your TV. And so I play it on our big screen TV, or I can pick it up and like walk around the house and play it, with controllers that are attached like that. Or we can even set it down on a tripod and just play with the little controllers detached and play. And it's just crazy, like all the different things this can do. But my kids are talking to their cousins live while racing, and we're racing, playing Mario Kart. Like that's like split second stuff. And the game is keeping up with us playing this over the internet from, I don't even know, this is a couple thousand miles. I have no idea how far that is. It's not close. It's not across town. It's not Phoenix. It's not, it's far away. And they have the ability to do that kind of stuff and to be on that kind of stuff.
It'll do it in the car too, right?
Yeah, and they can do it in the car. If you have a Wi-Fi card or something, you can connect that to that too, and you can have it so where they can live stream from anywhere, play things live from anywhere. My phone can play all sorts of games that, like, I remember I had a Sega Genesis console back in the day, and like Sega released every Genesis game on iPhone. You can get an emulator on there and play every game. And so I play it like Sonic the Hedgehog and stuff on my phone. And like, man, that thing, like, that's crazy that all that can be in there. But the other apps that the kids are on, and I heard two people talking about doing this earlier. So all of the tech stuff aside, we were talking about Instagram, and one person was saying, one of our staff here at church was talking to another staff member about like, well, you can keep track of what your kid's up to by, like, do you follow them on Instagram? And they're like, no, I don't yet. And they like just turned 18. And so, and he's moving out. And so they're like, man, I gotta, how am I gonna keep in touch with my kid and keep up to him? And they're like, oh, you just gotta get on Instagram and that'll be the thing. And I'm like, That's what happened with Facebook. It used to be everybody was on Facebook, and when I first started being a youth pastor, Facebook was the way I communicated with all my teenagers, and email was how I communicated with all our parents. And some of our parents refused to use email because email is like newfangled tech that they weren't into. And so some people, I had to do phone calls, which like, I'm already like become such a surrogate millennial. I'm not a millennial, but I became like such a honorary millennial by when I realized like I don't want to have to phone call everybody. I don't have time for this. Like answer a text or something, people. Like just because it's like I don't have time in one afternoon to try and have a conversation with every one of you guys on the phone in one day so that I can get on with everything else I got to do. I'm not a receptionist. I've got all these other things that we're trying to put together, and it takes a lot of time to be on the phone. It's great when you get a phone call and it's actually like worth talking to, right? But it's such a pain when you don't have to. But the students, like, they were on Facebook, and then my parents were all solely through email. And the parents all started getting on Facebook because they wanted to see what the kids were posting. It was all like, get a Facebook account so you can keep track of what the kids were on. Well, as soon as they did that, all the kids were moving to Twitter. And Twitter was the big thing, and so I started a student ministry Twitter account. And we were tweeting all the kids, and we were doing all that stuff, and I had a ton of followers, and there was a lot of engagement, and we were doing all this stuff, and that was the big thing where we were communicating. And then all the parents started getting on Twitter. And all the young people moved over to Instagram, popped up. And so all the young people moved over to Instagram, and they were all on Instagram, and Instagram was really cool, and it was really private and everything. And then Facebook ruined it, and they bought Instagram. Facebook, I don't know if you know that, but that's why your Facebook login is how you get into Instagram, if you have that. And that's why a lot of your students have a Facebook account, is because they can't get into Instagram without it. And so now you go through Facebook to log into Instagram. And so a lot of people had kind of automatic access to Instagram. So then the kids started making Finstas. Anybody know what a Finsta is? Nobody? It's fake Instagram. So it's where, and I've had a couple of students that were foolish enough to add me, to let me follow their Finsta. It's a private profile that you set up where your kids then create a second image. And some of the stuff I've seen on those are absolutely horrendous. I mean, like real terrible stuff. There are entire profiles to follow that are only followable by a Finsta type account. It's got to be a private account so that nobody can see who you follow, what you post, what you liked, any of that kind of stuff. And there are things that, like, I know kids that still follow cutting accounts on Instagram on a private account. Like, here's photos of where and how to cut so that you can get away with it and nobody will see it and it won't leave a scar so bad, so that you can keep getting away with it. I met with a girl not very long ago. I had to go see her at Palo Verde Mental Hospital, one of our students, a middle schooler. And I had to go visit her in Palo Verde because she had attempted suicide. And I mean, that's the reality we live in. And I was talking to her, and for the first time in the 2 years I've been here, I saw her with a short sleeve shirt on. I'd never seen her arms before. And she has scars from shoulder to wrist on both sides, all the way around, all over. She's tried every which way of cutting and burning and eraser burning and various other things. And there's a lot of different ways that people come up with to, my phone's gonna die. Okay. There's a lot of ways that people come up with to do this kind of stuff. And I was talking to her, and she figured out how to do most of what she'd done to herself on Instagram. And on a Finsta channel, I follow this kid on Instagram, and none of that stuff's on her profile. She has a fake one that I haven't located yet. They usually use some sort of nickname that like only their friends would realize, so like I had a friend who's this big dude, and his name was Demetrius, and his middle name was Dwight, and he had some other like name from, he's originally from not Haiti, but I can't think of it, somewhere in the Caribbean. And so he had one more name that was like kind of like that, and so he He went by 3D. And so his friends know him as 3D, but like you wouldn't know that if you knew his legal name or anything. An employer may or may not know that kind of thing. And he had a private, like, personal account that was like 3D something or other, and then he had another one that was, Demetrius, and had all that stuff. And I've, so it's like that kind of thing where I found several of them because I knew the nicknames of a bunch of my students. And so I found some, a friend requested all of them that I could find. And one thing you can see is you can see who follows it. You can't see who they follow, but you can see who follows them. And so I looked at that and I was like, oh man, okay, I'm gonna request and try and follow. And then I clicked on and I found that those Finstas were followed by other people's Finsta accounts. And so I found those ones and I'm like, oh, that must be this person because it doesn't have their face in the profile picture. It doesn't have anything, but I can like kind of figure out, I'm like, oh, that's this person. And if that person's friends with all these people, then that's gotta be her and all this. And so I figured out all these and I friend requested all of them, and like half the requests I made added me. I saw a girl that had sung on our worship team a week earlier doing bong rips on Instagram.
Oh, gosh.
And hotboxing her closet at home. Parents had no idea. I found, and I went and talked to the parents. And I talked to the student first. Just so you guys know, if I ever catch your kids doing something like that, I don't keep that stuff to myself. And I have fired volunteers over not outing that. I feel I would want to know that about my kid. And you have a right to know that about your kid. You're the one who needs to help them through that. And I will always do my best to be part of that conversation, but just so you guys know, if anything comes up like that, we find out they're sleeping with their boyfriend or girlfriend, or they're messing around with somebody like that, or they're thinking about that kind of stuff, if they're doing drugs, if they're drinking, because none of our students should be drinking. Sometimes that one, like, the worst is when I then bring that to the parents and they're like, yeah, so. And I'm like,
You're like, well.
well, I'm just saying it's an illegal narcotic and your kid's 14, so you do the math. That's not good for them or you, really. And then the best part is when like the kids try to get out of it, they're like, oh, they won't care. My parents gave me this. I'm like, sure they did. And then I talk to them, they're like, what? I gave it to them. I'm like, what's wrong with you? So, and if that's you, I'm sorry, but it's just dumb. Don't do that. But I will talk to you. But my goal will be for us to have the conversation together. My favorite plan is always, I'm gonna sit down with your kid, you're gonna sit down with us, and I'm gonna help be their advocate in sharing that without just getting like decked in the face for telling you that they've secretly been, dealing drugs at school or something. Because like sometimes that kind of stuff happens, and like, I mean, my parents will never watch this either. Like if my parents knew everything I did in high school, I'd probably be in a shallow grave somewhere. So I mean, there's just I won't try to keep that stuff from you. But so I started getting a couple of these kids in trouble because I was like, private messaging them, and I always give them like a couple of days. And what I tell them is I'm like, hey, so I saw this, and they're like, oh crap. I forgot that you're my youth pastor. I'm like, yeah, you were probably stoned, and then you added me on your account.
They just
I was smart.
everybody.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah. And then but then again, to let you guys know, my process is I reach out and I say, hey, so that's really something we need to talk with your parents. No way, they killed me, blah, blah, blah. Like, I swear my dad will actually murder me. I'm like, no, I'll know. So they won't. And I'll be there and I'll talk with you, but no, you can't. Okay, so when are you going to set up a time to come down to the church with your parents, and we're going to sit down and we're going to talk about what I found and what I know, and then we're going to talk about how we move forward in not doing this anymore, because you're going to ruin your life. And for me personally, like this kind of stuff, especially the drugs thing, like I take it really hard when the students are doing that stuff. Like I really struggle with that. Like I really want them to get better with it. When I was in 8th grade, a girl that I had kissed in 7th grade OD'd when I was in 8th grade. And then my girlfriend that year OD'd and drowned in her bathtub in freshman year, and I was at football practice, and they interrupted my football practice to tell her foster brother, who was on my football team, that his sister had just died. Or to tell her, I said mine, I think. Her foster brother was on my football team. Did I say that right? I felt like I jumbled that. I don't have a foster brother. So they came to tell him, and I was standing there. Sophomore year, I knew a kid who OD'd. Junior year, I had a friend who was killed in a drunk driving accident. Senior year, we lost 2. The year after I graduated high school, that trend continued, and it wasn't until I hit my 30s that I had a full 12 months go by where I didn't have somebody from my class in my small town die of some drug-related thing. One kid got wasted, went out on the lake we grew up near, and drove a jet ski at midnight and ran into a pier. And probably wouldn't have been on a jet ski at midnight with no lights on the thing, speeding around in the dark if he was sober. And so I'm not saying I'm like a crazy teetotaler who's going to tell your kid that you're going to hell if you have a beer when you watch a football game by any means, but I just like, man, I've seen what this stuff does, and I've seen stuff that that goes wrong in just one bad decision. It only takes once, those commercials, meth, not even once. Like, there's a reason for that, because you never know what that stuff's been cut with. And I had a friend go to the hospital my sophomore year who dropped LSD that had been, they used to use strychnine, rat poison, to get it to stay to the paper because it evaporates too easily. And so they use rat poison to keep it from evaporating. It bonds it to the paper better. And but what that does then is it causes all these cerebral spinal issues. And my friend dropped a dirty tab of LSD and ended up requiring brain surgery. We were 14. So I mean, like, I've been blessed to not be the person on the slab in any of those things, but I've been real close to a lot of people who've gone through that stuff. And so like when I see even just the kids, like we flew home, we kicked out multiple kids who had brought vaping devices to camp, to high school camp, and we flew them home. I bought 5 plane tickets, should have bought more because there were a few kids who lied through their teeth, and their friends vouched for them, and everybody just BS their way. And like, I don't know why it mattered to them that like their friend got to stay when it was like, your friend doesn't even want to be here. Like, he's spending his whole time lying and hiding stuff instead of getting into Jesus while we're here anyway. So like, what do you want to stay for? But so we flew 5 kids home from Colorado last year, and for vaping, and the conversation I had with them, like, every single one of them, as we talked, had bigger things that they were confessing to, that they were involved with. Like, they just didn't bring the hard stuff. They thought they would get away with vaping. This is no big deal. But it was still off limits. It was still a no-go. And it was in the contract the parents signed. That I had to keep reminding a few people who were mad at me when I called to say, sorry, they broke the rule, and I have a PDF copy on my screen. I can see your signature right under the thing that says you agree to these terms. Yes, signed it. And they were still mad, and I'm like, I'll forward you a new copy. You have one, but I'll send you another. But I'm sorry, like, I'm not doing this to be mean. I just, like, I have no place for this here. I tell those guys, like, man, I don't want to see you guys go down the path that, because it wasn't a big path. Like, it was the guys that I bought when I was in high school. It was the guys I bought weed from that first gave me mushrooms. It was the guys I was doing shrooms with that first gave me acid. It was the guys that I was doing acid with that gave me special marijuana that was laced with all sorts of other stuff, and ended up doing all sorts of weird things, and then finding out that, like, oh yeah, man, you just did PCP, like, wasn't that fun? Like, no, that's terrifying. Why would you do that? And like, I mean, just, crazy. And then I had friends, a friend the kid that showed me how to roll a joint when I was a freshman, 20 years ago. I mean, like, it's like the fifth graders doing it now. Not really, hopefully not your kid, I'm just saying. But the kid that showed me how to roll a joint when I was a freshman, I moved out of state for 2 years. I come back my senior year, he's got a meth lab in his garage. Things progress. So, with all the tech stuff, because that's what we're supposed to be talking about, but this is the kind of stuff that, like, people talk about these things, people post how to do these things online in places that you will never find. There's an app, by the way, you may want to write this down just in case. There's an app called Calc Plus, C-A-L-C Plus. It looks like a calculator app. It works like a calculator app. If you're on Instagram, you may have seen all the ads for it because they're blatantly posting the ads. It's a photo and video vault on your phone. It operates like it's a fully functional scientific calculator. It costs money to download it from the app store. And you get it, and it looks just like a normal account, normal app, a normal calculator app. It works really well, actually. It's a great calculator. So is the default calculator that comes with iPhone and Android. So if they have any sort of like real smartphone, they already have one, they don't need another one. But actually, the first time I told a parent about this here in Tucson, she literally said, "You've got to be kidding me, I just bought that for my kid yesterday." And I'm like, "No, you didn't." She's like, "No, I really did." She told me she needed a better scientific calculator on her phone, that this did all these special things, and so I got her that one. I'm like, "No, no, look, if you turn the normal calculator on she had an iPhone, like you take the iPhone calculator, you turn it this way, it's got all those scientific buttons now on it. And so she doesn't need that other one. It looks exactly like the iPhone one, but it's Calc Plus, not Calculator. Calc Plus, you type in a particular equation that you would never normally type in and hit equals, and it opens up a whole new file storage, a whole new desktop thing on their phone that can hide up to as much storage as available on their phone. And it's not locatable in any other app. It's got encrypted file names, it's got encrypted data. You can't get into it sideways easily. I mean, there are ways to do just about anything digitally, but to the average, parent scrolling through the phone, I'm like, "Oh, I checked the Photos app and it's not there." No, but it's in that. The thing about that is like the kids, like some of the stuff is just stuff that, they just want to keep it kind of private and they don't want you in. But some of that stuff is really bad stuff. Most of your middle schoolers, especially the girls, most of your middle school girls have already been propositioned to send nude or semi-nude photos via text message if they have a phone and any of their friends are contacts with them. I promise they have. That's just the world we live in. We can't escape it. That's the world we live in. We can't get around that. And most students don't realize what a big deal that is. But then what happens is, so they send one because it's that boy that I really do like. And then now that he's got that one, oh, well, and they tell him like, "Hey, send me one, just pull your shirt down a little bit." And so they do. And they send that photo. And they take that, the duck face selfie with tugging on the shirt collar a little bit. And then the guy's got that and he goes, "Well, now, here, just show me just send me a bra pic." I saw a really funny photo earlier, like, my little sister got a text from a guy asking for a bra pic. My dad sent her this. And it's dad standing there with his shirt off with a bra like draped over his shoulders holding his gun. Here you go, buddy. Good luck with that. Lose my daughter's number. Sorry, my phone is really determined not to video this. But so they feel like now, and if they say no, now the guy's got something that's a little bit inappropriate. Well, hey, I'm going to text this to your mom if you don't send this, or I'm going to put this on Facebook and tag everybody at school in this. Now they're like, no, don't do that. Okay, I'll just send that one. Okay, well, now I want this, and each one steps it up and gives them all this extra leverage to where kids have felt like they have no escape, and there are cases where like that's the main instigator that anybody can identify for suicide. Or for other things that happen. There's also just the enticement of wanting to meet up with people through all these apps, through Snapchat, through Instagram, especially Instagram, somewhere where they can interact with complete strangers if they have a public profile, or if they're interacting on somebody else's public profile, they can engage with everybody else. And it's given human traffickers new avenues into kids' lives and stuff. So we can't stop that all these things exist. You can't hide your kids in a cave and delete the idea of the internet from the brain for the rest of their lives and have them grow up in a bunker like, what's that, the Unstoppable Kimmy Schmidt show on Netflix. Like you can't just raise a kid in a bunker and then shoot them out at 30 and hope they're going to figure it out. It's just as bad for us. I have friends my age who I watched a couple I know get a divorce, and it was pretty ugly. It was all over Facebook, and they were fighting, and it was just ugly to watch. And then all of a sudden, the girl is posting all of her Tinder encounters, which if you don't know about Tinder, it's a thing that teenagers get a hold of too, and it's like swipe right if you like somebody and swipe left if they're no good, and so you get photos of people and you swipe right, swipe left, and then you get to message them if you swipe right, and you get to talk to them and try and hook up. And the whole goal, the app is not a dating app, it's a hookup app. The point is people are posting going like, I'm looking to hook up with somebody right now, swipe around, find them, let's meet up. And you know, some of the like 2020 and all that kind of stuff. I've done stings with people trying to meet up with underage girls and stuff through that app. And I mean, it's craziness, the world we live in. You can't stop all these things. You just cannot. And that's what one of the things that book will talk to you about. Like, you can't stop it. So what's the goal with all of it is really, just like with anything else, you got to teach the kids wisdom. You have to teach them how to engage and how to honor themselves and how to have some self-respect and let them know some of the consequences of these things, of what's going on. But because of all of the secrecy and everything, and because of all of the inherent shame with all of this stuff, it's not enough just to teach them wisdom. We also, I guarantee every single kid is going to screw up and have something bad on their phone, or look at something bad, or post something they shouldn't have. And it might be just blasting and gossiping about somebody. It might be flying off the handle and arguing with somebody, because we all know the best place to win an argument is on the internet. It might be it might be getting into stuff they shouldn't, or it might be something really serious that they can never take back. But everybody's going to have something, and so we've also got to be able to establish grace and be people who they can come to. And that's not easy. Like, I don't say that from a place of like, I'm real good at this, so like, you can take my example. My own kids struggle with telling me stuff. They're like, I didn't want to tell you because I knew you'd be upset. I'm like, man, I've tried to work so hard. Like, I talk to people like, don't blow up, because it just makes it so like, if you blow up at dumb things, that when you're frustrated, it just makes it so that you're not a safe person to go to, because they're like, I dropped that glass and shattered that nice glass that you like. You know, that one that came with your wedding set, and it was like the fancy like floral crystal thing. And I shattered that in the kitchen, and you screamed at me for 30 seconds. That's pretty small. You can apologize and move on, and nobody's, you know, like everyone gets like, oh yeah, in the moment, I was just mad. But they don't forget that. And then when something real big comes up, they're thinking, if that was that, what's going to happen? They're probably going to shoot me. Like, this is completely irrational. And you can do more good for them by knowing, but just, and not to, again, just like last week, not to shame you, but just to know it, like, that kind of stuff sticks. Those patterns build. And so even if you blow up over something small, even if they do share something and you're like, what on earth, how can you tell me that that's what you, why would you ever think that that's okay? How dumb are you? You know, or whatever. I mean, even if that's your reaction and you like walk away from that going, I'm the worst human alive, I'm a terrible parent, I've just ruined my kid's life and they'll never talk to me again, you can still come back from those things. But you've got to be willing to swallow your pride and eat humble pie and go and tell them like, hey, what I did was way off. And also find ways to honor and reward when they do come forward, even in small ways, so that they know that, you know, that it's going to be better for them. You know, if they do something, you know the consequence is this. Find a way to lessen it if they fess up instead of getting caught in it. Find a way to, if you catch them in it and they're willing to go all in on talking about what it was, find a way to do that. And no matter how bad it is, if you find out they killed the neighbor's dog, like, still find a way to address that without being super angry and just screaming your head off. You know what I mean? Like, we've got, because otherwise you'll just be locked out. And they've got 7 billion anonymous people who are very interested in speaking into their life. And because they come through that stupid computer in their hand, they have way more credibility than you do the older they get. It's just a sad reality of what we live in. So man, so turning to these contracts that we have, this actually speaks to some of the stuff I want to address with you guys. Start just looking at the cell phone one. The principles are more or less the same. Oh no, I did. Oh, in mine I messed up. Okay, cool. I think I got yours. You should have front and back of the same sheet. The full version of the contract packet does not. But like I said, I used this with my kids. I used a cell phone one for when they don't have phones yet, although apparently a bunch of their friends do. And they're like, yeah, we were watching, like, some of my friends from my class, they're in 3rd grade, and some of their friends were watching Deadpool on their cell phone at school. And I'm like, dude, there's like full frontal male nudity in that movie, along with some pretty graphic sexual depictions that are pretty inappropriate for anybody to see. Like, it's not a morally upstanding film. It's appalling to me that there are 3rd graders who've seen that movie. But also, I mean, like, I'm sure that there are things that I've let my kids watch that they've watched every Marvel film except Deadpool, and and there's all sorts of stuff. But like, we watch the things, and even in those moments, like as we get into like how to build wisdom, like maybe not the wisest thing. So I'm really okay with myself if you think I'm an idiot for having let my kids watch all of the Marvel films. That's okay. I sometimes sit there with them and I'm like, oh, that was a mistake. Because Captain America, who's like the pillar of like purity, is going, and Iron Man's like, language, Cap, and like calling him out because he dropped an S word in the middle of the fight. And like, okay, and people say that kind of stuff. And especially like we watched Guardians of the Galaxy, and they're like starting to joke and say the things, and like they're all very sarcastic and say really inappropriate things. And I'm like, girls, pretty much anything they say, if you repeat that, you're grounded. Just none of that's okay for people to say to each other. And it's funny because it feels like that's such a weak thing to like respond with. But because we keep telling them and we've, instructed them, raised them up knowing, like hearing repeatedly, like those aren't okay things. And I don't get super mad. I'm like, that's not something you should say. Here's why. A lot of the time, here's why. Because it's something that's very demeaning to, it makes people feel bad about themselves if you say that. And so they're learning early. So all their friends say stuff like that, and they're like, Daddy, there was a kid in school, and he said this. And you can't call somebody an idiot. That's a mean thing to say. And I'm like, you're right, you can't say that. And then like 5 minutes later, the other kid's like, hey, can I have an iPhone, and can I watch Deadpool? Because they all watch Deadpool. I'm like, no. Well, my friends watch Deadpool, and their parents let them watch Deadpool. I'm like, your friends' parents are idiots. Why would they? They're like, Dad! I'm like, what? They are. And my wife's like, you told them they can't say that. I'm like, that's true. So like they call me out, and then I turn around, I'm like, girls, you're right, I'm sorry. Like I made a mistake there and I shouldn't have said that. And really, when I was like, what do you think, like, if I had a chance to talk to that person about Jesus, like, do you think that they'd be, that Jesus would be happy that I said, hey, you're an idiot, you need to follow him better? Like, no. I'm like, no, Daddy, Jesus wouldn't like that. You need to stop saying that word. Okay. And so like, that didn't happen overnight. But it's the consistent thing, but it's the willingness too. Part of the reason I think that stuff's sticking genuinely is because I'm willing to admit when I've gotten that wrong, and I'm very apologetic, and I'm willing to talk through it when it's appropriate, age appropriate ways of doing that. I'm terrified now because I know next year they have sex ed in school, and I'm like, I've taught countless number of classes like that to students, and I'm really like, I'm not ready to talk to my kids about this, but they need to. Actually, I'm behind the ball. I'm going to get to some of that here as we move past this. But so this deal, this contract. So looking at the cell phone contract, you should have both sides. We use this with, they got kid tablets that are like super locked down, but they still have access to some things that like, I don't have time to watch every single show and make sure it's okay before they download it. And they've established trust with us, so they know, like, if they mess up, they lose this stuff because we have this. So, but looking at this, again, it's the point, the heart behind it, even if the wording's not right or whatever, but it says, we agree, like sitting down with your kid and establishing, like, we agree, having a cell phone is a privilege and not a right. And like, man, I tell you, like, so many kids, they don't understand what privilege means. They think that means it's their right. It's not. And you may need to redefine that word for them because they know they feel very entitled and privileged, and they think that means I get everything I ask for, and if you don't give it to me, you're wrong, and I'm going to call the cops. I've heard of things like that. Like, kids are like, I'm going to call the cops on you. Like, wait, for what? Oh, because they wouldn't give you the new phone that you want. What? Good luck with that. You do that. Just know you're paying the fine when the cops show up for that 911 call, and then there's a fee for a false 911 call, which I've had to pay before, by the way, as a kid. And it was a legit accident. We had a busted phone, and my dad's pager number was 913. I didn't hear the one beep. Honestly, I didn't hear the one beep. I hit 913, dialed the rest of the things. I even showed the guy when it came to my door on call, and he still wrote me a ticket. I was like, dude, you suck, man. Like, after I shut the door, I said that. Now I don't have as much problem with cops, but it was weird how like every cop was just the worst when I was doing drugs and doing illegal things all the time. Then like it was weird, yeah. Like I really hated cops, and like, I've learned since that like if you go around talking about how much you hate cops, like there may be a chance that you're doing things you shouldn't. This would happen to me anyway. It may not be. But so helping establish that it's not a right. My phone will be charged in my parents' room at night. Again, you may want to scratch that out or not agree to that one, but like things like that. But what that says, like I just had this conversation with my kids where we let them off the hook with that. What we used to do is we had the chargers on an extension cord up on top of a bookshelf that I can barely reach. And I had taped the charging cables to the tablets up there. So the kids couldn't reach them. Our step stool won't get them high enough to access it. And the bookshelves are flimsy. They'll die if they try to climb those because they will collapse and then fall on them and they'll be dead. And so they won't try that. So there's no way for them to really legitimately get to the tablets when they're on top of the bookshelf. And so we always have the tablets charging up there so that when the tablets are charging, you can't touch them, you can't get to them, you can't lay there at night because it's charging at the foot of your bed. We made that mistake for a minute, even after we signed the thing, and I took the tablets away for a month. Because I was like, you just got this, you don't even miss it yet, give it back. I'm gonna give this to you next month, I'll figure out a time. When I get around to thinking I wish you had a tablet, I'll give this back. And so I gave it back, but because I found them one time, like I heard a weird noise, and they were fighting over what show to watch next. Or no, one of them wanted to turn the other thing down because it was like too loud for her to hear her own show. They were watching two different shows on their tablets at like 2 in the morning. And they were like laying there on the floor next to the charger, like doing that like face to face with the tablets between them. And it was too loud to like hear her movie while this one's playing. And so they were fighting and got to where they were arguing, like, stop it! And I heard that in the middle of the night and I was like, oh, somebody's hurt. And I go and find my kids watching their tablets. And so I took those away, and they didn't get them back. And then when we got them back, we put them on top of the thing to charge. And then we kept them up there anytime they weren't using them, and they had to request to have them. And then I set the parental controls on there, which like, man, especially if you guys have iPhones, you have so much control over what your kids can access. Like, goodness. And then with Android, you have, in a way, even more. And there's a lot of different ways to look at that, and I'll tell you a couple of them. With iPhone, it's very easy. Just connect them to your iCloud family account, and then you can control absolutely everything on their account, and they can't log out, they can't get through it or anything else without the password. Now here's where it gets hard. Don't give them the password.
Or forget.
Yeah, or forget, but don't give them the password. Then that's where like so many parents, like I talk to people, I have somebody sitting in my office talking to me about like all the problems they're having with their kid. Like, well, have you tried this with the, like they're always on their phone when they shouldn't be. Like, have you tried doing this and setting, iPhone now has a screen time app where you can lock it out and you can't access any of the apps at all except what you allow. So you can leave like emergency calls and texting on, or maybe not texting because they're teenagers, so emergency call to these 3 numbers and that's it. And everything else is shut off at all these family time hours. And you can control that from your phone, and you can set the password and everything else. And you can lock them out completely of that stuff, and they can't do anything about it. They can't hard reset and get out of it or anything. There's nothing they can do to change that